Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to another in our series of webinars during which Friendship Place discusses the various programs we undertake, the folks we serve, the changes we make in the community, and how we work with community members such as you to help make life better for many, many people throughout this city. We have with us today Jean-Michel Giraud, our president and CEO, and Catherine Mitchell, who is the person who runs the Brooks, and you all know her well because of all she does around that. And so we have, like I mentioned in the pre-chat, that we have a number of questions we've already received, but Catherine is going to tell us about what's going on there, and then we'll feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll be able to just make this a very lively, exciting hour where people can learn more about what it is we do over at the Brooks. But first, I'm going to throw to Jean-Michel and let him do some introducing, and then he could toss to Catherine, and then I could pick up with some questions. So I'm going to mute and make sure that we can all see Jean-Michel and Catherine and begin. So thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, Chris, for organizing this webinar, and thank you all for being online with us this afternoon. It's great to see so many of you, and we are looking forward to this conversation on the Brooks at 2 years. It's been a very exciting 2 years building the practices in the building and building community relations as well. I want to thank all of you who have supported us in that direction. It took quite a bit of work. We have an excellent team of well-trained and friendly staff serving at the Brooks. We're going to hear from Catherine about the work that she's put in herself in the last 2 years. I want to thank you all for your support of Friendship Place, of course. I know many of you are donors on the call, and to the new friends joining us today, welcome. Looking forward to your questions. Over to you, Catherine.
Great. Thank you, Jean-Michel, and good afternoon, everyone. I apologize that I am a little bit under the weather right now, so I'm hoping that my voice holds out for this hour. But I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about what we've accomplished at the Brooks in 2 years. It's hard to believe that 2 years ago, we opened our doors at the beginning of this pandemic, and we're still doing amazing work day to day. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and we've built a phenomenal team. And I'm excited to share some of our successes with you today. So I have a bunch of numbers, probably more than anyone cares to hear, but I just wanted to kind of quantify the work that we've done and then share some more of the anecdotal successes that we've had. So in our 2 years of operation, we've served 183 families at the Brooks. That totals to 573 people and 359 children. That being said, at the Brooks today, we are currently serving 13 families. If you recall, the Brooks has the capacity to serve up to 50 families. So clearly that number is very low. We had projected to serve about 200 families per year, given that we have 50 units available and with an average or expected length of stay of 90 days, that totals out to about 200 families per year. But what we're seeing across the district, which was true last year and is still true today, is that we're still seeing a decrease in the number of families who are seeking shelter services all across the city. So I don't have the exact number of how many families are in shelter today across DC, but it's definitely under 200. It's probably under 150. And if you recall, we have 7 or 8 short-term family housing sites and only about 150 families in those placements at this time. So I would love to say that we've solved and ended family homelessness here in the district, but of course we know that there are different factors at play. One being mostly due to the fact that evictions haven't gone through like normal practice since the beginning of this pandemic. So families have been able to stay put. And of course, everyone is hopefully familiar with the Stay DC federal funds that came through Washington, DC to help families with rental assistance and utility assistance during this pandemic. And we know that DC worked really hard to get those funds out to families and individuals to prevent families from needing to experience homelessness so that they could stay put. So those are just 2 small reasons of why the numbers of families at the Brooks has been quite a lot smaller than what we expected to have served at this point. But we remain open and ready to take those families whenever they may come to us. And we've learned a lot along the way and had the time to really focus on putting in the groundwork to get used to operating short-term family housing so that if and when we are at full capacity, we are prepared to serve them. But I want to share about the accomplishments. What happened to those families when they stayed with us, and where are they now? So of the 183 families that we've served, we've made 123 housing placements. And 110 of those families have moved into rapid rehousing through the city's rapid rehousing program. And then the other families that have exited to housing had vouchers. So either they came to us with a housing choice voucher. Some families have been placed in permanent supportive housing during their time with us, or targeted affordable housing, two of the city's voucher plus case management programs. And there's been some other families who've come through with more site-based subsidies. We have referred 8 families to transitional programs. Transitional programs are available for heads of households between the ages of 18 and 24. So younger parents and their children can go to longer term transitional housing programs to get a little bit more support when it comes to those activities of daily living before they transition into independent housing. So we have a couple partners throughout the city that we tend to refer those younger heads of households to as appropriate. And then we were able to divert 26 families in the last 2 years. So diversion is an important part of the family system for serving folks experiencing homelessness. Diversion takes place when families have friends or family members that they can stay with to avoid a shelter stay. As we know, it's the goal of the district as well as Friendship Place to not keep families in shelter any longer than they need to be. So if families have a strong support system, they have another place that they could stay to still continue working towards their independent housing, we can support them in creating a diversion plan. So to temporarily stay with family or friends, and refer them to the city's homeless prevention program so that they may still receive that housing support to move towards their independent housing. So diversion is a good thing, and we've been able to do that 26 times in the last 2 years. So overall, of course, the goal of the Brooks is to exit families to housing within 90 days. And I'm proud to say that our team has not only met that expectation, but exceeds that expectation. And our average length of stay is 71 days at the Brooks. So we don't need families to stay in shelter any longer than they need to. We jump right in with folks to support them towards their housing goals. We make sure that they have the support and the plan in place for their transition into housing. And we have been able to do that faster than that 90-day expectation. So we're very proud of that. And we're very proud of the families that have come through the Brooks. You know, it's very, very difficult to transition to a shelter placement and then quickly pivot to, you know, picking up and identifying a new unit and moving your entire family back out again. So we're seeing incredible resilience and motivation from the families that we serve, which inspires us to be able to motivate them, push them along, and help them achieve their goal of moving out into housing. So we're very proud of that. And we're surprised by that, frankly. And we love to see it. In terms of where the families go, I do have a breakdown of how many families have moved into each ward in the city. So the majority of our families have moved into wards 5, 7, and 8. Ward 8, we've moved 35 families in. Ward 7, we've moved 28 families. And in Ward 5, we've moved 20 families. But we have moved families into every ward of the city, including Ward 3, where we are situated. And one family even moved to Maryland based on the subsidy that they had before they came with us. So when we're making housing placements, we follow the lead of the family that we're working with. We are never directive in our approach. We, you know, talk with families about, you know, where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you have the social supports? Where do your children go to school? Where is the center of your life and your lifestyle? And we do our very best to support families in moving to the parts of the city that they would like to move to. We do find that wards 7 and 8 in particular have more affordable housing than other wards of the city. We do find that wards 7 and 8 tend to have more flexible landlords. But since a lot of our families would like to move elsewhere in the city, not necessarily ward 7 or 8, we are working on identifying new landlord leads, new properties that we can move families into all across the city to meet the best needs of the family. We also do check-ins with families at the 30-day mark and the 60-day mark after they exit the Brooks, just to check in to see how things are going, offer any supports in the transition. And we're really proud to say that over 97% of our families have remained stably housed at the 60-day mark. Our contract requires us to check in with families at 30 and 60 days. And after that point, they can expect around that 3rd month mark after exiting the Brooks, that they would be connected to a rapid rehousing case management provider. So from there, the rapid rehousing team that they are assigned to, if they, of course, exited to rapid rehousing, would step in and offer any support for the duration of that family's tenure in case management. But we do know that the city is working to try to decrease the amount of time that it takes for families to get connected to rapid rehousing so that they can have that case management support sooner. But at this point, it's taking about 90 days to my understanding. So what have we done with families besides the housing placement? Well, we've done quite a bit. So thanks to the generous support of the community, we are able to continue to provide move-out shopping trips for families. We know that moving into an apartment is a huge accomplishment, but it's important to us that we can support families in making their apartments their homes. So we help them with a shopping trip to get those housewares, those linens, those necessities that help them get more settled and more comfortable into their living spaces. The Department of Human Services provides a bed and a dresser for every family member when they move into their homes. But thanks to the generous support of donors to the Brooks, we're able to add on to that. And through a partnership with Court Furniture, we also provide a couch and dining room set to families, just to do our best to try to fill out the home. You know, when folks move into an apartment and rooms are empty, that doesn't feel comforting, inviting, and warm, and it doesn't help families to get settled in. So we do our best to fill in those gaps with the private funding that we have, thanks to the very, very generous support of our donors. We continue to be overflowing with books and toy donations. So thank you to anyone who has donated to the Brooks. We are running out of storage space for those items because we have had fewer families than we expected. So it's a good problem to have, but it's really nice to be able to you know, offer those items to families when they come in. You know, families are only permitted to bring 2 or 3 bags of belongings to the Brooks with them, just due to the limited space that we do have. So the fact that we're able to provide those happy, exciting items to kids when they walk through our doors really helps families to feel more comfortable and welcomed to the Brooks. Additionally, thanks to the tremendous support from the community, we've been able to have several food truck parties across the year. You know, something a little bit outside the box and different to offer to the families. So I have a long list of vendors that have come to the Brooks, and I won't name them all, but we've done ice cream, we've done soul food, we've done Korean food, we've done African food, Caribbean food, smoothies. And so it's very exciting. Our families love to participate in our food truck events just to try something new or something a little bit different outside of the norm. A lot of us take for granted that we're able to go to a restaurant or get takeout food on a regular basis. And so this gives a little sense of normalcy for some families, for the families who are with us, and just something fun and different. Many of you joined us for our ribbon cutting event last year. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary with some very fancy people, including the mayor and Councilmember Che and Laura Zeilinger, the director of DHS, and a lot of wonderful supporters. So that was a wonderful event to commemorate our 1 year of service. It's hard to believe that that was a year ago at this point. And we also did our first annual block party in June. It happened to be the hottest day of all, but it was a really nice event. We partnered with the police station next door to put on that event. We partnered with Mentoring Through Athletics, which is a group that we partner with for mentoring and tutoring. And we had a lot of great community support. We had Department of Parks and Rec out there with scooters and fun activities for the kids. We had a food truck. So it was a very lovely event. And I think we saw some of your faces around there. So thank you for joining us if you were out there for the June block party. We continue to do our monthly birthday parties. That's one thing that, it's easy to take for granted that, when you celebrate a birthday, you're able to host a birthday party with your children's friends and your family. But Families at the Brooks, we understand that that's an important part of childhood. And so thanks to generous donors who keep us supported with cupcakes and decorations and prizes each month, we are able to celebrate children and adults on their birthday every month. We continue to partner with Homeless Children's Playtime Project and Mentoring Through Athletics. Homeless Children's Playtime Project, starting last April, was doing weekly playtime with children at our site. Due to COVID, that initially started as virtual playtime, but when the weather started warming up, we were able to do playtime out on our playground. And we received wonderful feedback from families who had a blast having their kids come to playtime. Due to Omicron, they had to pull back from in-person playtime, but we are excited that starting this April again, we are coming back with in-person playtime out on our playground. And Playtime has been a wonderful partner for us in being flexible to the needs of the families that we serve. So for example, Homeless Children's Playtime Project tends to serve an older group of children, just because kids who are more able to play independently from their parents. But given the location of the Brooks and just the dynamics of the families that we serve, we actually tend to serve families with younger children, mostly babies and non-school age children. So Playtime Project is meeting us where we are, and they have expanded their reach to serve younger children. As long as they're able to walk independently, Playtime is happy to have them join during the weekly playtime. So we're excited for that. Mentoring Through Athletics is another group that we partner with. They do tutoring, and we've heard since we've started that particularly due to virtual learning, there's been some gaps in students' achievements in school. So tutoring has been by far and away the biggest ask that we have from our residents. And Mentoring Through Athletics hires professional tutors to come partner up with students at the Brooks. And they have been able to do in-person tutoring when it was safe to do so. And then due to Omicron, they were able to do virtual tutoring. So we appreciate the partnership with them. But of course, their name is Mentoring Through Athletics. So they do more than just tutoring. They also have that mentoring component to build those relationships with the youth in our program, as well as that athletics piece. So we're excited as the weather gets nicer to dive into that aspect of the services that they offer. So getting kids outside, getting kids moving, all of that is a critical part of child development and so forth. So we're really excited for their offerings. They'll be with us for some activities this spring break. And we're excited for that. We hosted a back to school event with the police station next door. They've been a great partner for nearly every holiday and several activities that we've put on. I'm blanking on her name, but her name is Kai Branch, and I believe she's the community liaison, community engagement staff person at MPD. She stays connected with us several times throughout the year to come up with activities, events, and offerings for our families and the larger community that MPD serves. So they will be hosting a movie night in April, which we're super excited about. We were able to provide warm winter gear. We know that's a big ask of our families during the colder months, and we were able to do that. We have weekly self-care Wednesday groups for parents it's been virtual due to COVID, but a space for parents to come in and check in with each other, vent, debrief, get support from other parents who are going through similar things with them. And that's been facilitated by our child and youth specialist, LaShonda Abrams. Holidays are a great time at the Brooks. We did Halloween costumes, pumpkin painting, We provided Thanksgiving dinner for residents. We have done our Christmas gift drive, and Santa and Mrs. Claus stopped by the Brooks. And we've also decorated the Brooks to have a more festive environment during those special times of years. We offer movie nights, craft nights, paint nights, jewelry making, game nights, water play. We're always trying to come up with new ideas for ways to support the recreational needs of families and offer a fun activity for families to do together. It's great bonding. And it's a great way for folks to kind of take their mind off of their situation for a brief amount of time. We've offered developmental screenings for children with early stages and strong start, and they'll be out this Thursday. So families who are interested in having their child of any age be screened for any developmental, either motor, language, any type of delays, early stages and strong start has been a great partner in helping us support families who have those needs. Another huge thing that our supporters have been able to allow us to do is we have been able to send families on family outings. We hear from families that they're bored, they don't want to be at the Brooks all day, and particularly during COVID, people get a little stir crazy. I know I certainly have. And so we have been able to send families out on family outings. So some examples of some outings we've done: we've sent families to the trampoline park, arcades, roller skating, family dinners. And our residents have really expressed appreciation for the opportunity to have fun and bond with their families outside of the Brooks. So thank you for that. That's not something that's typically provided in an environment like ours, but we know that it's super important for families to have positive experiences together as best as they can. We've celebrated Black History Month, Valentine's Day, and every holiday is an exciting time at the Brooks. What's coming up next for us is spring break. So we are planning a movie night, we're planning game night, we're having Easter activities. We're trying to offer something almost every day of spring break. So while families are outside of school, that they can have a good time together. And then looking forward to summer. We arranged with the support of DHS to send our youth to summer camp for free last summer. And we're looking forward to doing that again this summer. So that's a lot of exciting stuff happening at the Brooks. It's really fun to plan those events, and we absolutely cannot do any of that without the support of the community. So thank you for that. I also just want to highlight some major accomplishments of our team. As many of you know, I was on maternity leave for several months, and that is a big thing for a team to have to adjust to their director being out for 4 months. So I would like to shout out Aurelia Lesh, who is our social worker who stepped in as acting director in my absence. And I also want to shout out Ace Thompson, our operations manager. The leadership from the two of them was incredible during my leave. I've heard from other staff, I've heard from our partners at Department of Human Services, and I heard from pretty much everyone who they interacted with, that everything was seamless. There was no disruption in our service and operations despite me stepping away for my leave. So I'm so proud and grateful for Aurelia and Ace and their leadership while I was on maternity leave. So thank you. We continue to provide excellent teaming with external providers that serve our families. So that might be Child and Family Services, that might be Department of Behavioral Health providers, that might be other housing providers that work with our participants. It's really important that while they're with us in shelter, we are partnering with the other entities that serve the families, because many hands make light work, and it's best to wrap around the families in that way. Evelyn Velasquez, one of our case managers, was a winner of the Home for the Holidays initiative. So that initiative is a citywide initiative to encourage our families to move into housing during the holiday period. So for the second year running, we've only been in operation for 2 years. For the second year running, one of our case managers has won that contest. So we know our case managers are top notch and really put in 110% to move families into their own homes by the holidays and all times of year, of course. And Evelyn was also named as a superhero of the month by DHS for having the most diversions last month. So shout out to Evelyn Velasquez. As to be expected, during the Omicron surge, we did get a wave of COVID cases at the Brooks. It hit staff, it hit residents, but the team did an incredible job of mitigating the spread. We did not see it spread from one family to the next. So it was hard to say with Omicron, since so many of us got COVID during that time. But, we responded swiftly. The communication with the families and staff was immediate. We did deep cleanings. We followed protocols to mitigate anyone's exposure. And we were able to contain that outbreak just between December and January. And we focused this year on team mini retreats. We're a site-based program. We've been on site since the start of the pandemic, but we have staff who work around the clock who may never get the opportunity to connect with folks who work during the day if you're working overnight. So we really focused on team building and cohesion and teamwork. And so we've hosted mini retreats every quarter to get all staff of the Brooks, whether you work Saturdays at midnight or 9 to 5 during the week, to connect together, because we truly do believe we are one team. We work together. We serve the same families. We all have the same mission. And we're hearing great feedback from the team members that's been really helpful. That's been really rewarding. And people are really proud to work at the Brooks and work together. So I have received a couple of questions ahead of time, Chris. I'll jump into some of those, and then we'll jump into some other questions that might have come through. So we're really grateful that the support from the community has been phenomenal. We are always, always, always receiving offers of support, folks who are interested in volunteering and so forth. And I appreciate everyone's patience, because COVID has really understandably impacted our ability to accept volunteers and to get a solid volunteer program going. So the first question I'll answer is, how can neighbors help? What are our greatest needs? In terms of material needs, we can always use things like linens and bedding for twin size beds, pillows, towels and washcloths, pack and play sheets. We do provide pack and plays to any baby that comes in our program, baby wipes, toiletry caddies, laundry bags, and grocery and CVS gift cards. When we were able to offer those gift cards to families upon arrival, knowing that they come to us with only 2 or 3 bags of personal items per person, there was a great appreciation for the support of the community to allow them to run to the store right down the street to get the other necessities that they need. So those are all, those material needs are things that we are always in need of. While we love and appreciate all of the books and toys and offerings, despite being a very large building, we actually are overflowing with donations of those types. So if you are interested in providing those items, if you could just reach out to us ahead of time to confirm that we're able to take those items. Right now, we don't have a need, but there may be a point in the future where we do. And volunteering, I'm so grateful that so many people are interested in joining us at the Brooks and to volunteer. We are beginning to consider what in-person volunteering can look like. Understandably, COVID has prevented us from fully exploring this, but I'm thinking 2022 is our year that we can really dive into this and see how we can engage the community inside of the Brooks. So I just want to put out there that any ongoing volunteers that want to join us must have TB tests. We'll have to get clearance through the National Sex Offender Registry, and they also must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. So those are folks who are interested in doing long-term, ongoing, either weekly, monthly, whatever the case is. We don't have a volunteer program standing yet, but eventually we hope to, and those are absolute necessities for folks who are interested in volunteering. Yes.
Oh, sorry, if I jump in, Chris Kennedy has access to a couple of wish lists, one for Child's Play and one for Amazon, that he could drop into the chat as other ways for people to donate. Sorry to interrupt, I just want to make sure.
Yes, great points. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chris. So for right now, anyone who's interested in volunteering, the easiest way that we can bring you into the fold is if volunteers or groups come to us with ideas for specific events or activities. For example, I see Miss Expertin on the call. She has reached out to us for art classes. And that is something that, hi, Sylvian. So we are definitely going to be reaching out to you now that COVID is getting to a more manageable place and we are going to be able to do in-person offerings. But it is easiest for us if you know that you'd like to do a yoga class, or if you have a skill set in jewelry making or a specific activity or event. If you come to us and say, hey, I'd love to put this on, that's the easiest for us to incorporate right now. So if you have an idea and can fully execute it, we're happy to plug you in on the events calendar and make that happen. Also, since Playtime Project is relaunching in-person Playtime in April, that's a great way for folks who are interested in ongoing volunteer opportunities to reach out to Homeless Children's Playtime Project and go through their clearance process to be involved as a volunteer. But again, we are exploring how we can in-house have ongoing volunteers join us. So I hope the enthusiasm and the ideas are still out there. And I apologize that COVID has really put a damper on our ability to bring you into the fold. I get a lot of requests for student volunteers looking for community service hours. And we just connected with a group of student volunteers to compile Valentine's Day gift bags for the children and adults in our program. Such sweet, wonderful kids. Working on a school project and came through and supported us in that way. So most immediately, if students are wanting to get together with a group to compile activity kits or treat bags or welcome baskets for holidays or for any ideas that they might have, that seems to be the easiest way we can bring students and engage students in that way. But more longer term opportunities will come once we are fully established in how we can recruit and bring volunteers in on a regular basis. But, we're thinking of Easter baskets, we're thinking of Mother's Day and Father's Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas are always good times of year for folks to come together to support us in that way. Random national days. Like I just learned that May 20th is National Pizza Party Day. I think that's a great opportunity. I don't know. So we know the creativity is out there. We know that there's enthusiasm out there. And so, bring that creativity to the table and we'd love to connect. And I just will say one caveat to that is while we love the homemade cookies and those types of things, due to COVID-19, it really is preferred that any snacks or treats are prepackaged. Just for, the health and safety of our families. Okay, I've done a lot of talking and I see a lot of questions coming through the chat. So I'll see what Chris has for me.
I can start reading. I think you covered most of what the questions that were pre-emailed. I guess there was one that was pre-emailed that probably worth talking about. Obviously, when we first opened, there were some troubling experiences with some of the neighbors and our residents. Have we found that has quieted down? Has the situation ameliorated itself, or?
Yeah, I will say, we do have a small group of individuals who periodically report complaints to us, but I haven't heard any additional reports of racist incidents in the park, most gratefully. But overall, it's been a very positive and supportive response from the community. I think, there was kind of an ask of how can supportive community members continue to support, what's the work that needs to be done out there. And to that, I would say the community can focus attention and efforts on engaging the larger Ward 3 community around inclusion and acceptance of the Brooks residents, but also, it's a topic for another day, but, voucher holders, subsidy holders in Ward 3, if you have been following the news, there's been some backlash around folks that could be exiting from the Brooks or, other tips like providers, folks who have subsidies who move into the Ward 3 area. There's been some negative comments about those individuals, which are unfair and inaccurate. So for, I know Friendship Place is working on ways to engage the community in this way. So I think folks who have an interest should join Friendship Place. And Chris, what is the name of that workshop or the webinar that we'll be doing on that?
I'm trying to remember what you're referring to. The
workshop.
We've held a webinar on this
yes,
already.
Okay.
And we're planning other ones. We're also engaging our partner Anne Frank House, a partnership that goes back over 25 years. We're going to have a dialogue with them next week. Yes, and the goal is to foster greater understanding of the folks holding vouchers who are now at a higher number moving into the rental buildings along the avenue. And we do want to foster a community dialogue, which goes back at Friendship Place all 31 years for us.
Yep. So you're referring to our Promoting Understanding webinar.
Yes.
And we'll get that up on YouTube. We did that a few weeks ago, and as Jean-Michel mentioned, we're going to do some follow-ups on how you can recognize the best way to approach someone who looks like they're in need, and how you can educate your neighbors how to best approach people. So more to come on that. So thank you for flagging that. Appreciate it. If you want to read from some of the questions in the chat then?
Sure.
All right, here's one. How can some of the success that we've seen with dealing with family homelessness inform the efforts to deal with homeless couples and individuals? And Jean-Michel, this might be right in the wheelhouse of if you wanted to talk about Valley Place.
Yes, well, it is interesting that the city launched short-term housing facilities for families first, of course, in an effort to build up the homeless services system for families, and that the idea is now being used to serve singles very much in the same way. At the very end of November, it has capacity for up to 52 singles in 20 apartments. It's a building conversion from an old transitional housing facility for families. It's been completely renovated. It's a pilot program, and we know that this is going to be a very important model in the homeless services system for singles. We're one of two facilities. The other one is on the Community of Hope in more in the center of the city on Girard Street in Columbia Heights. We're seeing some of the same programming needs there in order to facilitate fast transitions in hopefully under 90 days. And we have facilitated a number of transitions already. And of course, the programming is a little bit different. We're going to be looking at mental health, maybe even more than at the Brooks, at addiction management already that's coming up. We are co-ed also. This is exciting, where before couples had to separate. A man or a woman would go into a different shelter. That choice, that decision had to be made, which often was very traumatic, of course, for couples. And I'm happy to say that we decided to be co-ed to fill that gap. There really was a need to do that. So this is all very new. We've already had one webinar for the regulars. I know you were with us for that one. We're going to try to have one at the 6-month mark to give you an update. But it's really interesting to see that the city is using lessons learned from one side of the service delivery to apply them to the next.
Agreed. Let me go through the chat a little more here. Is there a risk, and we've talked about how we've not been at capacity because of the low numbers, is there a risk that the city may want to consolidate facilities if we're all of them are not at capacity? Catherine?
That's a great question. And my assumption is the answer is no. I think there is an understanding that at some point evictions will likely ramp up again, and theoretically we enter a post-COVID world, or we're less impacted by COVID. And pre-pandemic the shelter system was seeing higher numbers. So I think it's the expectation that we'll see higher numbers again, and the city is definitely looking to that, so that we need to keep our facilities available for families should that time come.
That makes sense. Do all of the ward-based facilities work in the same way as the Brooks in terms of the placement choices, the support that we provide follow-up with, the supplies and information and things we provide when families are leaving?
So to most of that, the answer is yes. We are able to do that extra stuff based on the funding and support that we receive from private donors and individuals. So we are all expected to, we have the same contract. So we are expected to exit families in 90 days. We are expected to provide support with application fees and transportation should it be necessary. We are expected to do those 30-day and 60-day follow-ups. So all of that is pretty identical, though each agency kind of has their own spin and own take on the approach. And of course, we love to say at Friendship Place, we have the Friendship Place way. So, that explains why we are successful too. But in terms of like the move out shopping trips, that I'm not sure. We fund that through private funding. And I know other providers may also have private funding that they're able to do that in, but I know, for example, I doubt other providers are able to help with the additional furniture outside of what DHS offers, because that we certainly fund through our private support.
Next question in the chat. Often there's a 90-day lag time for rapid rehousing start. Does that start while the families are in the Brooks? I mean, how do we coordinate with potential lag time with that?
Yeah. So that the clock sort of starts once families sign their lease and exit into their own apartment. That lag time is due to capacity of rapid rehousing providers. I think in a perfect world, it would be seamless. They would, meet their worker while they're still with us and transition onward. But I think the issue is capacity. But I will say DHS is doing its best to mitigate that as best as possible. So if we are exiting a family who we know has some higher challenges, different barriers, higher needs, we are able to advocate for expedited case management assistance, so that there is less of a lag time between their connection to a provider, so that that particular family can be more successful in their housing.
While there's space at the Brooks, is it possible to invite non-DC families to utilize some of the some of the free space in the various family-based shelters? Is it open to the potential for families coming outside of DC?
That goes to a legal question in terms of who is defined as a DC resident under the Homeless Services Reform Act and who is eligible for different services offered by the city. So the short answer is no. It would have to be, we can only serve DC residents in DC funded programs.
Okay. What sort of COVID protocols do you still have in place at the Brooks?
All of them. So I know that the city, masks are not required in grocery stores, or, different businesses have the ability to impose their different, mask requirements, social distancing requirements, and all of that. But the Brooks is a congregate setting. And so if you've seen the guidance from Department of Health and Department of Human Services, we will be the last entity to lift mask mandates, if ever, or social distancing and all of that. So we are still doing COVID screening for anyone who enters the building. We are still wearing masks. We're still social distancing. We're still limiting the number of families that can occupy community spaces at the same time.
Can you talk a little about the nature of the Section 8 housing vouchers that pay market rate rents and how that works? How common is it across the various wards that people utilize those?
That's a great question. So there are two main subsidy types that Brooks residents, for example, could be eligible for. So permanent supportive housing is a voucher plus case management program. So families have to meet certain criteria to be eligible for permanent supportive housing. So there needs to be a chronicity of homelessness. So a family has been homeless for a certain amount of months or experienced different episodes of homelessness totaling a certain amount of months over the course of a few years. There also needs to be a diagnosed disability of some sort, so a mental health or medical disability. And those, we also use an assessment called the FSPDAT assessment. And that's a tool. They also have the same, a different variation of these assessments for youth experiencing homelessness as well as individuals. And it's one tool that all providers across the system can use to get an understanding of the family or the individual's situation and prioritize subsidies and vouchers for the most vulnerable folks. So it takes into account how long a family has been homeless. It takes into account if there's any medical or mental health challenges. It takes into account any legal or child and family services cases, basically just identifying who is the most vulnerable and needs the most support, as there are limited resources for housing support. So permanent supportive housing is the highest level of housing support that is available. It's that subsidy plus that intensive wraparound case management. So families with higher needs tend to be eligible for permanent supportive housing. And when those vouchers become available, they get matched in the coordinated assessment and housing placement meetings that happen twice per month, so that those families can get connected to those resources and move on. The second level of housing voucher support are for families who still meet some criteria in terms of chronicity, how many episodes of homelessness they've experienced, and they still need to have a diagnosed disability of some sort, but they are already connected to service providers in the community, and they don't need as intensive case management services to be successful in housing. And that program is called Targeted Affordable Housing. So it still has the voucher, it just has lesser intensive case management services. And they can still graduate onwards. So the vast majority of the families we serve, as we've talked about, move to rapid rehousing first, but they have an opportunity either while they're in shelter or while they're in rapid rehousing to be considered for one of these vouchers based on the results of their FSPDAT assessment and, you know, their story, essentially, their experience in the homeless system.
Thank you.
In terms of where those families move throughout the city, vouchers are accepted in every part of the city. It's a legal requirement that landlords must accept vouchers. So any landlord who says they don't accept vouchers is, that's not legal to say that. So a voucher holder can move to any part of DC. There's certain vouchers that you can, they call it porting out of state if folks wanted to move to any other state or jurisdiction besides DC, but the vast majority of what's available right now are just DC-based subsidies, so folks can only remain in the district.
Looking back to a question that had come in email earlier, you know, that the placements that we make, you mentioned that they're in all 8 wards, with some predominance of a couple of wards. Where do those placements tend to be vis-a-vis the children's prior schools or jobs that are maintained by the parents? I mean, how close are folks being placed to where they work and go to school? Yeah,
so we always follow the family's leads in terms of what part of the city that they're interested in moving into. And a lot of families say, I don't want to move my children from their school, or, you know, it would be very difficult for me to get from this part of the city to get to my job, to get to my children's school. So we'd absolutely take that into account. I don't have numbers or statistics about the success rate in terms of placing in proximity to the school. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the families are the ones signing the lease. The families are the ones choosing where they live. We are never coercing or forcing any family to take any unit. So we have conversations with families about what is going to be realistic for you and your lifestyle, where you need to get to, what's going to be convenient. Do you have a vehicle? Are you on public transit? Those are all a part of the conversation that we're having when we're working with families on housing placement.
Thank you. You mentioned the need for single sheets and pack and play sheets. Do those need to be new or can they be gently used?
That's a great question. I think given COVID concerns, our families would appreciate new items. We unfortunately don't have the capacity to launder the items on site ourselves. So while I am a new mom and love hand-me-downs, I know that our residents would appreciate new items.
Thank you. What happens when a family moves into permanent housing if their children have established a relationship with a mentor that you talked about, or an athletic or a camping program?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something we considered when we were partnering up with mentoring through athletics, because the goal of a mentor relationship, of course, is to be ongoing. And so mentoring through athletics, we're sort of still piloting it since we haven't had a whole lot of families with school age children. Again, like I mentioned, our children tend to skew younger and be non-school age. But mentoring through athletics is open and willing to continue the mentoring relationship even after the family exits the Brooks. We only launched with them in the fall, so they're still pretty new to us. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But yes, that person definitely has the right mindset of that long-lasting support and ongoing, because the transition into housing is also not the easiest for every family or every child. And so to have that consistent mentor would be critical for that child's stability. Thank you.
We still have time for one or two more questions if folks want to drop them in the chat here. One question I want to follow up that you had mentioned before, that as part of our contract, we do tracking at a certain amount of months after they leave the Brooks up, and obviously they move on to another rapid rehousing provider, as part of their next steps. Do we have a sense as to a year and a half out? Again, knowing that we're just now at 2 years, but how stable are folks who were with us in the program at the beginning, so 2 Aprils ago? How stable do we know they are today, for example?
Yeah, that's actually a great question that came up last week, and we were looking into that as a team. So part of the data collection system, it's called HMIS, and it's the database that homeless service providers enter all their notes, families who enter shelter or connected to various homeless services program, their data is captured in there. And so system-wide, they do track after families have exited short-term family housing, do they come back into shelter at any point along the way? So we are still too new to get that data, but I think in the coming months, we'll have existed long enough to see if the original folks that we served and placed in housing do or do not come back into the shelter system.
That's right. I think we're just coming up on that time where we'll know that information. We don't quite know it yet. Well, Jane Stein has put a great I think could serve as the last question before Catherine, you and Jean-Michel and I have one or two things to say to wrap up. Can you tell us about a specific success story that really moved you?
Oh, wow. How to choose. One of our very first families that we served, one of the original, I would say, first 3 or 5 families that we served, is a woman who was pregnant with twins at the time, her first children. And this was her first time coming through the shelter system herself. She shared, she was very open and engaging with us and shared a lot about her personal history of her own childhood and not really having the stability that she needed. Her parents in and out of her life, she sort of raised herself. And this was the very first time that she was doing things on her own for her own family. Now that she was pregnant with twins, she was reaching out for help and seeking the support so that she could be successful. And so she was employed all the way through the end of her pregnancy, in a job being on her feet, bless her heart, with those twins. And she was just very motivated, and she was able to identify a unit, and she signed her lease, and then the next day went into labor and gave birth to those twins. And so she was able to bring her children home to their home, not the Brooks, not the shelter, and was able to take her maternity leave and eventually ended up going back to work. And just a true example of sometimes this is just one pit stop along the way for someone else's journey. She was, so motivated, and despite everything she had gone through and the lack of support she had in her personal life, the support she had at the Brooks was able to really set her and her family up for success, to move onwards and upwards. And so that was just a real stunning success, and one of our very first ones too. So I always remember that and carry that with me.
Jane, thank you again. That was a great question on which to end the conversation. And Catherine, thank you. This was a wonderful conversation and a dialogue with those in the team, on your team, from your people on your team to the folks that are helping us in our work. So thank you for your time. And I know you're not feeling well, so I really do appreciate your time today. Amongst and to your credit and the credit of everyone at the Brooks, I had to skip over a number of comments in the chat that were simply kudos, 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 kudos to your work. So I share that with you now. If you scroll up real quick, you'll see kudos, 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 which is phenomenal because it is important, life-changing work that y'all are doing over there. So thank you. Any closing comments you'd like to make? And then I might have a comment or two in the thread of Jean-Michel.
Yeah, I mean, I would just really like to shout out my team. A few of my team members are on this call. I think it's one of those things that everything happened so fast in the very beginning of just trying to launch and create this, but I've said it from day one and I still continue to say it. We have exactly who we need to do the work that we do. And, you know, we sought out to do something a little bit different. We know that, you know, we hear from our clients that, you know, they have had experience in other parts, other shelters, other parts of the homeless services system. And we set out to challenge and change that perception of what a service provider could do, should do, or is. And, you know, I'm so proud of our team because we get feedback on a daily basis pretty much of, wow, the Brooks is different. Wow, you know, this really is a place I feel safe and I feel supported and I can see, you know, what's next for me. And so that is really remarkable. We're achieving what we set out to do. And we're really proud of every team member and also the participants that come through the Brooks because they remain our inspiration. The resilience and the motivation and just the optimism that we see is what keeps us going. And thank you to the community because we could not do anything outside of the box or anything a little bit different or, you know, fill in those gaps without the support, without your donations, without your care and concern. So we really, really appreciate this community.
Thank you. And just, it's been a wonderful 2 years of making a difference in folks' lives. So thank you. Before I throw to Jean-Michel, I thank you, Catherine, again, and your team for being here and taking the time today. So what a great chance to share with everybody. I wanted to put on folks' radar 2 events that we have coming up. One is Friendship Walks. I'm going to drop into the chat here the link. So go to friendshipwalks.org and you can join us on the morning of April 30th. Registration starts at 9:30. Programming starts at 10:30. The walk starts at 11. We are meeting at 17th and Constitution. That is the Lock Keeper's house. We're not meeting this year at the Lincoln Memorial. We're going to be at the other end of the mall and walking around. But this is a great way for you to be visible in the community and, you know, showing that you care about the people we serve and you want to also help make a difference in the work that we're doing. So please, please, please sign on up for that. The next thing I was going to put in the chat is a link to our anniversary gala that takes place at the French Embassy on June the 16th. That is a Thursday. You can buy tickets now. Also, they have some sponsorship opportunities in there. This is a chance for Friendship Place to celebrate 30 years of making difference in people's lives. I mean, we've served Jean-Louis, who I think is still on the call, did some calculations at one point and saw that we've served 30,000 people over the course of 30 years. And that's pretty special. So that's, you can come and celebrate with us at the gala that evening. So I put the link there, but friendshipwalks.org for the walk, that link there for Eventbrite for the gala. Please come join us and celebrate with us both of those occasions. And with that, I'm going to toss to Jean-Michel to close us out.
Well, thank you, Chris, again for organizing the webinar today. Thank you all for joining and for supporting us. As Catherine mentioned, your support allows us to add so much to the programming we're able to provide to our participants. I want to thank you, Catherine, for an excellent presentation today with so much information, and you and the entire team at the Brooks for doing such excellent work to take care of our families at the Brooks. So again, thank you all for being on the call today. We look forward to seeing you at the walk and at the gala and on the webinars. Be well.
Take care. Thank you, everybody.